Hello everyone. Welcome to the Texas Outlaw Running Talk Show. This is your host, Briston Rains, and today we have Jeremiah and Regina on, and they are the winners of the Dinosaur Valley 100, a 100-mile race that took place in Texas in November. And they ran some really fast times and completed a really incredible distance. And so I'm excited to be able to share with you guys their stories, their training, things like that with them. And so before we even get into that, I want to let you guys know that we do have a Patreon. If you look below in the show notes in the description below, there's a link to our Patreon. What this Patreon does is it helps support the show and keep it up and running. And so if you guys want to pour into the show and really help us out, you guys can click that link in the Patreon below. I think it's like $2 or $3 a month. It all goes straight back into making this podcast possible. That is enough of that. Here's Jeremiah. You just finished the Dinosaur Valley 100-miler and won not too long ago. How are you feeling right now?
Oh man, emotionally, I'm still really riding the high. I mean that race it felt like a big deal to me. I think it was 8 days ago, maybe when I finished, so a little over a week. So emotionally, man, I'm awesome. Really excited about how the race went. Physically, I'm still easing back into it.
Oh.
I mean, I did get 10 to 15 miles since then already in, but it was really slow paced stuff. Kind of walk jog type things. I'm excited to run again, but I know it might not be a smart decision to dive right back in at least for another week or so. So just trying to put the brakes on.
Yeah. We just got done talking about that, about the importance of recovery not too long ago.
It's something that a lot of us, when you get into these ultras, you just love running so much. Sometimes we get in the bad habit of not allowing ourselves recovery time. So I'm trying to just keep reminding myself of that.
Oh yeah. So I wanted to know, when did you start running? When did that start?
Oh man, I I ran my first race in 2017.
Okay.
So what is that? 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was 30 years old. I had played sports growing up. I was a soccer player growing up, and I was always a decent runner. I had some fitness, but I remember in high school, the cross country coach came to the soccer team, was like, "Hey, do any of you guys want to run cross country too?" But it was during the same season as soccer, and our soccer coach, he said, "Yes, you can do that, but if you miss practice because you're off at some cross country meet, like you lose your starting spot on the soccer team." And so I never did it, right? I never got into it. But I think while I was playing soccer, 90-minute games of jogging back and forth, I would always notice at the end of the game, I was one of the last few people to kind of get tired, right? I felt like I was stronger at the end of the game. And I think maybe looking back now, maybe that was a good sign to say, hey, endurance running, might be something you could be good at in the future. So even though my running journey didn't start until I was 30 years old, I had a pretty decent base, I think, from soccer.
Oh yeah. It seems like there's so many good runners that come out of soccer.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you do, right? Back and forth,
Yeah.
up and down a field, a little bit of sprinting, a little bit of jogging, maybe some walking here and there, but it's just constant movement. And
Yep.
somehow that's what we then gravitate towards later in life when we get in these running journeys, just constant movement.
Yep. Yeah. It kind of reminds me a lot like a fartlek. Are you familiar with fartleks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that. Just soccer, running back and forth, doing sprints. Reminds me a lot like that. But yeah, a lot of really great runners have came out of soccer. But whenever you got to that stage to where you did start running, what did that look like? How did you find out about running races, and kind of what got you started?
Yeah, I think it was, so if my first race it was actually January 1st, 2017. It's called the Hangover Half Marathon. It was like, I don't know, maybe 5 months before then, I was at a work conference. I had a long drive, driving from Minnesota to Kansas City, and a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you should listen to this audiobook and I've listened to some of your podcasts, and so you're familiar with Born to Run.
Oh yeah.
And so I had no idea what this book was about. He said, "Hey, I hate running, but I listened to the book and somehow I almost got inspired to run." He's like, "So you might like it." And so it was like a 7.5 hour drive home, listening to Born to Run. And I got home in my driveway and I wasn't done with the book yet. So I put on headphones and just sat in my house and finished the book like straight through. It was, I don't know, it was like something crazy, like 14 hours. I just listened to the whole thing. And it was that moment is when I learned 100-mile races existed. Before then, I couldn't even told you how far a marathon was. I didn't know it was 26.2 miles. I just knew, running is running, right?
Yeah.
So when I heard about that, I said, well, my goal is to run 100 miles. I mean, those are the races that I want to do. And I skipped the 5Ks. I skipped the 10Ks. I never ran any of those. I just started training for a 100-mile race. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I just got out and ran. And it was 2 years after that, actually, almost to the day. 2 years after that, I ran my first 100-mile race. So really like 0 to 100 in 2 years.
Wow. And did you, whenever you first started getting into running and racing, were you already fast, or is that something that came over the years as you've been running?
Oh man, I was not fast at all. My first 50K, uh, so I ran a year of road, so 2017 only road races, right? But that was never the goal, right? I heard about these trail races I wanted to get into. So then after 1 year of road racing, I had my first 50K race early in 2018, and it was like I finished in like over 7.5 hours.
Wow.
And like now, like my 50K PR is like 4 hours, right? I mean, it's almost double the time. So me getting into running and learning what this whole trail racing thing is, I mean, I started out, I was not a fast guy, right? And this has all kind of happened in these 4 or 5 years that I've been doing it. And it's fun to go back at Ultra Sign Up, where a lot of our results are kind of tallied and documented, and kind of see how I'm going to say slow I was early on, and how I've just really progressed over the years. It's been a fun journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really neat, man. And I think that's inspiring for some people to hear that, yeah, you won this really big 100-mile race in a crazy time, right? But it's inspiring for people to hear that are maybe getting into running, and that maybe they can think, oh, maybe one day I'll be just as fast as him. And so that's always inspiring, even for me. And so that's good to hear. So what kind of sparked you getting faster at the ultra and trail running distances? What type of training? What were you listening to? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is trial and error, and there was definitely lots of error. I think what has helped the most in the long run is I wasn't afraid to ask for help. So
Yeah.
like you run across these people in these running communities that have done these types of races, and I looked up to them, like, I mean, they were legends, right? I heard about this gal down the road who had done 100-miler. She had ran Leadville, and like I just started asking questions,
Yeah.
right? And they have all kinds of great advice, the do's and the don'ts. Old buddy of mine used to say, smart people learn from their mistakes. The smartest people learn from others' mistakes, right? So I tried to figure out like what did these other people do right or wrong that I can learn from. If I had to pick a couple big milestones in things that really made me jump, I'd say from kind of one level to the next. The biggest one would be strength training.
Mhm.
When I first started running, I just ran, right? I just got out the door and I just ran. There was no rhyme or reason to it. There's no structure, no nothing. Um, I and then I was getting faster, and there's a certain point where then you start to get injured, right? And you kind of have to take a little time off to get back in, and you're kind of teeter-tottering on this, like, I'm getting faster, but I'm also getting hurt. And so it was strength training. And speaking of asking for help, I hired a strength coach, right? I didn't have a running coach, but I had a strength training coach. And his name's Nathan Carlson, great guy. He's a physical therapist by trade. So 50% of the time he works with patients that are injured. The other 50% he does strength training for runners and triathletes. And so I think that was maybe actually my biggest step up in terms of started getting faster.
Yeah. Could you give us an insight of kind of what that strength training entails?
Yeah, it's strength training sounds intimidating. I think that's why I didn't do it on my own, because like I'm a kind of a thin guy, right? Like
Yeah.
I said, a soccer player, runner. I was never going to be great, on the football team. So strength training always had this like scary sound to it. But in reality, like I'm not in there like bench pressing like a bunch of weight. It's nothing like that. It's like taking a band, like an elastic band, and putting around your knees,
Yep.
or your ankles or whatever, and just doing like some side to side things, right? Or maybe balancing on one leg and doing like one-legged squats, things that it's a lot of body weight exercises or elastic bands. And it's more about doing movements that you neglect while running, right? When you're running, you're putting one foot in front of the other for a long time. It's the same motion. You're using one or two specific muscles and you're neglecting everything else, right?
Yeah.
There's not the side to side, there's not the bending in the knees. And so strength training is just, for me, like balancing out the whole body. And so
Yeah.
it's a lot of simple exercises like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning us in on kind of what that looks like. That's kind of what I've been doing in my strength training. And so, um, yeah, it's a good thing. And it can seem very intimidating, but even if you look at Elliot Kipchoge's strength training, it's what you're talking about. It's bands, very lightweight, up and down, things like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
good.
doesn't take much. It's funny though, even though I know it doesn't take much, I've been working with the same strength coach for a few years. I could probably just go off and like, I know the exercises, I could do it on my own, but for some reason it's still like, I don't think I'm disciplined enough for the strength part, because I just like running.
Yeah.
I could run all day, every day. And so I still, again, ask for help. Like I got to lean on this guy to make sure twice a week, I'm in there for an hour, twice a week, doing my strength training. Otherwise, if I neglect it, I'll probably get injured pretty quick. That's
Oh
what I
yeah.
believe anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that one. Um, so I kind of want to get into the Dinosaur Valley 100, but before we get into that, I wanted to know what your training looked like going into that race and what prepared you for that 100-mile race.
Yeah, so this would be, let's say that I think this is my sixth 100-mile race that I've ran.
Okay.
Um, and training for each one of those has looked different, right? Every time it's kind of like I'm tweaking things, I'm trying something new.
Yeah.
This one on paper, my training leading up to this, it should have never worked, right? People will look at this and it's like, dude, you didn't log enough miles. You had these weird breaks and gaps where you just like stopped running for a week. And I mean, but that's kind of how life is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, things do get in the way. Um, I used to believe you had to have, like, going up to 100, you had to have like multiple 100-mile weeks, right? You get into the 80s, 90s, and hundreds, and you had to hold that for a while. That's what I used to do. Um, I'm glad I did it then. You learned what it's like to run on tired legs. You learn what your body can do, how much it can withstand. But I've kind of realized I don't need that anymore personally, because I think sometimes that overtraining has had me going into races a little too tired. So for Dino Valley, I backed off the miles a little bit. I mean, I think my longest week was maybe 60 miles, maybe.
Wow.
And that sounds like nothing for, a lot of ultra runners. But I doubled down on the strength training, right? I made sure I never missed any sessions. And this is the first year ever in my life, my running career, that I've actually tied in speed work. I'd never done speed work before, right? I was scared of that too. And so adding in like a lot of tempo runs. What actually happened was I was training for a road marathon earlier this year, like October. And I actually used my road marathon training, if you will, to build me up for 100. I just added in like a couple extra long runs, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a road plan, plus some long runs,
Yeah.
some more long runs.
Yeah. Cool, man. And what made you want to sign up for the race?
So I know you have a lot of Texas runners, Texas guests on the
Oh
show.
yeah.
I'm not from Texas, but I run every week with a group of trail runners here in Kansas City, where I live.
Yeah.
And a handful of them were born and raised in Texas or have worked in Texas. And I was running on a Thursday evening, and a buddy of mine, his name's Chris. He was coming down for this race. He said, "Hey, it's near Thanksgiving. He's going to run the 100K, hang around, see family afterwards, just enjoy time in Texas." He knew I had come off a 100 miler in July for the Vermont 100, that I wasn't pleased with the result. And so he kind of dangled that carrot. He's like, "Hey, I'm going down there. I'll have a vehicle. All you got to do is show up. You can ride with me. Like, I'll pick you up from the airport." He just kind of, how us ultra runners are. Like, you ask somebody enough, they'll sign up for the race, right?
Yeah.
And so he told me about the belt buckle, the state of Texas in the background with a little dinosaur skull. It looked cool. So a cool buckle. Friend was going down. He knew I'd come off a race I wasn't super happy with, and he knew this would have been a good one for me to come back and prove that I could run what I thought I could run. And yeah, I guess it worked out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what'd you end up running it in? How many hours?
So I finished it in 19 hours and like 46 minutes.
Wow.
The previous course record was I think like 21:15. So I beat that by about an hour and a half, which was really exciting. This was my first sub 20
Wow.
miler. I had ran a 20:46 before, so I knew I was getting close to that, but this was the first time I was able to land it. What was funny is my wife was crewing for me, and I gave her a pacing chart of, this is what I think I can do, every aid station and all that. And it came down to 19 hours and 51 minutes of what I thought I could do. So where I finished was 5 minutes faster than that. So if I've ever planned something outright and had some guess at what I was capable of doing, I mean, I absolutely, nailed it to the T. So that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, going into the race, before race morning, what did you do? Anything special preparing for the race or anything? Eat anything
So
special?
yeah, I mentioned that Vermont 100 in July. I think my biggest mistake going into that race was the week before the race, like 7 days before the race.
Yeah.
I had a lot of work travel. I was trying to catch flights, a lot of driving, different things. I did not get much sleep. Um, the biggest change I made for Dino Valley was making sure I got this strict sleep schedule, like 7 to 10 days before the race. Going to bed at 9 o'clock, sleeping as long as I possibly could, just catching up on those hours, like letting the body rest up. The night before the race, you never sleep well, right? You got race jitters. You can go ahead and just assume it's going to be a terrible night's sleep. At least that's my experience. So, but what you can control is like the 6, 7, 10 days before that. And so I just made sure I got plenty of food, plenty of sleep, and just went into it well rested, I think, is the big thing, because I've fallen asleep while running before in some of my other races, Leadville, Vermont, a handful of those other hundreds. You're just so exhausted, your eyes just start to close, and I've fallen asleep while running, and so I totally avoided that. This one worked out a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you ran Leadville 100?
Yeah, 2019 Leadville.
Wow.
That was actually after that race is when I started doing strength training, because it beat
Cool.
me up so bad.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of up and down, like long continuous climbs and long continuous descents that are really hard to train for where we live, in the middle of the country. And but it was an awesome experience. My slowest 100, I ran it in 29 hours, just beat the cutoff by like 1 hour. And so again, it just kind of shows you that's a 29-hour 100, and I just did a 19. So I've done 100-mile races, like finishing, a 10-hour difference in times. It just goes to show how much you can improve.
Oh yeah. And I mean, Texas is a lot more flat than Leadville. What was the terrain like in the race for the
For
Dino Valley?
dyno,
Yeah.
I went in thinking it was going to be really easy, because I looked at the elevation profile. I think they estimated 9,000 feet of gain total. So Vermont that I ran in July, that was 17,000, right? So you're looking at like 8,000 difference, and I'm thinking dyno's going to be super flat, super easy. And I talked to my buddy who had ran the 50K before. I looked at a couple race videos. I was surprised. It felt tougher than I thought it was going to be. Part of it was just the rocks, man. You guys in Texas, just those loose rocks are brutal. We've got rocks in Kansas City, but they're flat, right? And they're easy to get your footing. They're not rolling out from under your feet, trying to twist your ankles. That made the course particularly hard as well. So I ended up on my watch like 10,000 feet a game, and that's a pretty tough race. So
Oh yeah.
I was Texas is definitely, it's the second race I've done in Texas. I did Bandera 100K a couple of years ago, and I've been challenged every time. So don't underestimate those races, yeah, down in your neck of the woods.
Oh yeah. So it's the rocks Texas is known for in the ultra community, huh?
Yeah, and it's actually really funny. The other weird thing about this race is the first race I've ever had or ever ran really that had cell signal during the whole race.
Wow.
So I was actually like doing Instagram stories while running, and I posted this one video of just me running like one of my favorite sections of the course. And this girl from Kansas City responded, and I didn't say where I was running or what race or anything about it. And her first question was, "Are you in Texas?" And I was like, "How?" Afterwards, I asked her, I was like, "How did you know?" And she's like, "Oh, Texas rocks. When you see them, you know them, right?" So she just by the scenery, she could tell I was racing in Texas. So
Yeah,
that's how unique it is.
yeah. And that state park is very unique because when it dried up, they could literally see dinosaur footprints in the rock of the riverbed.
Yeah, I know. And as a kid, that's another reason why I signed up. As a kid, I was just the biggest fan of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
When you sign up for this race on Ultra Sign Up, they actually ask you, "Hey, tell us about yourself." You do like a little paragraph if you want. It's optional. And I think my having a good day. Then I think when I signed up, I said, "I'm Jeremiah Nemechek. I'm extremely passionate about dinosaurs, and I'm mildly passionate about running." And I think that was how yeah, that's what I said entering the race. I just do love dinosaurs. It was a cool place to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you drive by, they have big dinosaur statues out there and stuff. It's a cool
Yeah,
park.
yeah.
Um, I want to hear start to finish the race, the experience, the ups and downs you went through, all the way from the start to the very end.
Yeah, going into this race, um, usually most races, when you sign up on Ultra Sign Up, you can see who else is in the race. There's a list of entrants. The race director, Libby, chooses for Dino Valley, she chooses to keep that private, which honestly makes a lot of sense to me. Like if you're going out of town or something like that, you don't want the world to just look up online and, oh yeah, Jeremiah's going to be in Texas this weekend. Nobody's going to be home. There's safety reasons and things like that. But for me, what it meant was I wasn't able to see what the competition was. I usually like to go in and see, all right, who are the fast guys and gals, and what races have they done? And I dig in deep. I do my research on some of these participants. I had none of that going into this race, right? I had no idea who was in it. So that was actually, I think mentally ended up, I didn't like it at first. I think it ended up helping me. Like it took some stress away. I didn't have one or two people I was trying to pick off a race or anything like that. So I went in just blind.
Yeah.
I had never seen the course. I didn't know who else was running. I didn't even know how many runners were in it. I didn't find out until race morning. There ended up being like 130 people starting the 100 miler. It was supposed to be a lot more than that, but it got down to like 20 degrees. And apparently in Texas, a lot of people don't want to run in 20-degree weather or
Oh yeah.
25 or whatever. So some people didn't show up. So the field had kind of shrank. So I get up to the start line, I look around, and the 100K and the 100 miler are starting at the same time. And we have different color bibs, but it's hard to keep track of who's who. So that's the other thing. The other unknown is I didn't really know, without kind of seeing everybody's bib. I didn't know who I was even racing against. So I told my wife, and I've made this mistake in the past where I get too competitive too early. I told my wife, she was the one crew member I had. I had no pacers. This first 100 I've ever had with no pacers. I just went in and I said, I don't ever want to know what position I'm in until I'm at least at mile 70. Because in my mind, the race doesn't even start until the last 30 miles. And looking back, I can kind of see what happened is I started out at a pretty steady pace, a pace I thought I could keep the whole race. And I was sitting in about 10th place for a while. I didn't know that at the time because, again, some of the runners were 100K. Some guys just took off. I mean, they almost sprinted out the gate. And I'm thinking, there's no way they're running 100 miles. Apparently, some of them were. But I settled into about 10th place. And I stayed there, maybe maybe I slowly climbed a little bit, maybe the first 20 or 30 miles. And somehow, I didn't pick up the pace. I guess other people just started slowing down. I ended up getting in third place around mile 37. And so that's still really early in the race, right? And I was sitting in third, and I kind of had a feel, it's a looped course, a couple out and backs, you kind of see faces. I kind of had a feeling I might be at least top 5. I didn't know exactly where I was. And I just held there for, almost like 45 miles. I made no moves. I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I'm just going to keep running. I did hit a couple lows. I remember in the 20s and 30s miles, I started feeling a little fatigue in my legs, and I'm thinking, God, like I've got 70 or 80 miles to go, and I'm already feeling like a little tired. This is not going to turn out well. Lucky for me, like that tiredness I felt at like mile 20 and 30, it stayed, but it never got worse until, I don't know, mile 70 or 80, right? I just kind of sat in this zone, right? It was a really great place to be. So for about 45 miles, I just sat in third place. It wasn't until I think mile like 81 or 82, and it was dark at night. I roll into an aid station, and I see one of the guys that I know is ahead of me sitting on the ground. And I'm thinking, okay, people are starting to crash now, right? Mile 80, people are hitting that wall. And I didn't even say anything. I barely even stopped to fill it with water. I was like, I'm going, right? I kind of fed off this adrenaline. I had been starting to feel pretty bad at that point. But right when I saw that guy on the ground, I was like, I feel bad, but I don't feel that bad. So again, not to put him down or anything, but it made me aware that maybe I don't actually feel as bad as I thought I did. Maybe it was more in my head. So I started picking up the pace, and I get into mile 90 aid station where I see my wife with 10 miles to go. And I ask her, I was like, am I in first place or second, or what's going on? She's like, well, there's a guy ahead of you. You're in second. There's a guy ahead of you, but he just went over and like, he's massaging out some cramp. And so it was right there in the aid station. Again, I didn't see these guys on the course. I passed them all in aid stations. So it was mile 90. He was trying to stretch out a cramp, something like that. And so I just took off, and I actually ran those last 10 miles faster than I had like run the previous 20. I was just amped up on adrenaline. I was like, I'm in first place. We're going to get the win. We're going to get the course record. I'm going to get sub 20. It just all came together, and I was so fired up, and I ran that last 10 miles. Faster than I ever thought possible. And so it was a lot of fun. So kind of started out steady, had a couple lows in the race. And then once I started passing people at the end, I was riding that high. Gave me so much energy.
Cool, man. Wow. I think the lesson we could take away from that is don't let the aid stations get you at the end of a race, huh?
And that's been one of my biggest problems in the past is, just sitting too long in aid stations, especially when it was, 30 degrees at night, right? It's cold. You get in there, they've got these little heaters or maybe a fire set up, and it's like a moth to the flame. You just get trapped in. It's just comfortable. You're around your friends or your crew, and you just want to sit there. Don't. If you really need to take care of something, that's going bad, do it. You got to handle your business. I did one long stop around mile 60 because it started to get dark, and I've been sweating in the same clothing all day, and the temperature was dropping fast. And so I did one clothing change at mile 60 where I just did a new shirt, new like undershirt, new everything, just to get dry warmth back in me. And aside from that, that was my only big stop. So yeah, don't let the aid stations rope you in. Get what you need and go. You can just grab food, and you can eat while you're walking and running. You can do everything while you're moving. Just don't stop.
Yeah.
The other thing about aid stations, I mentioned I had cell service. I would take out my phone when I knew I was going to be like, I don't know, 30 minutes out from an aid station that I see my wife. I take out my phone and I couldn't text as I was running, but I did the voice to text thing. And I said, hey, coming in, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I need one bottle of Tailwind, one of water. I need a pack of gummies. I just had this list. So she had everything just laying out for me. I dumped my empty hydration vest, picked up my fresh one with everything loaded in all the pockets, and I was just in and out. And so when I say I ran this race, I mean, it was just as much, her win as mine, just getting me in and out and taking care of me. I couldn't have done it without her, especially not having pacers. So yeah, I was texting while running and just so I could, not have to stop at aid.
Yeah, cool, man.
So it was a new strategy. Some people might not like being on your phone out on the trails, but for a couple minutes at a time, it felt worth it to me. I mean, you're out there a long time, right? You gotta do something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Whenever you did hit those low moments, you did mention adrenaline, but what kind of why got you through those low moments during that race?
Yeah, I remember the first one really clearly. It was probably, gosh, it was in the 20s, like late 20s, when my muscles started to hurt way more than they should have for that early in a race. And there were a lot of other runners out there, all different distances. And I remember running up behind this lady. She had a pack on. She was hiking with her poles. I don't know what distance she was in. I don't even remember her name. I don't think I ever got it. But on the back of her pack, she had just printed out and like, put in a little plastic protective thing. It said the words "you can," like in all caps. And it was just the strangest thing, because at that point, I kept asking myself, prior to seeing that, I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Mm.
I think I've started out too fast. I don't know if I can keep this pace for another 80 miles. And then I see the words "you can," and I almost started tearing up. I mean, I did. And so it was then, like, that might have been what it was that got me to that, like, mile 80, right? Where I said I really settled into that zone, that I felt good, because I just kept saying, she's right. And that's right. I can do this. I know I can. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. And it did. Um, but yeah, just the simple words. I just kept repeating it. You can, you can. And I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it's those other people out there, that ones you don't even know, you know, um, yeah, helped a lot.
Oh yeah. It's just the little things, y'all. Um, yeah, and sometimes I know Tejas Trails, that race organization, they put out signs along the course that have some quotes or sayings and things like that.
Yeah, there were a few those at aid stations. The other thing is, because it's a looped course and there's so many other runners out there, you see a lot of people often. And there's a couple out and backs. So you see a lot of people not just like passing them from behind, you see their faces when they're running at you.
Yep.
And like everybody was smiling. I mentioned my friend Chris was running it. His brother Nick was also running it. And there was one other lady from Kansas City. So I had some other friends, but we made the trip down for the race. And like when I saw them, they would just give me the biggest smile. And they're like, "You're looking good, you're looking strong." Like, even though when I didn't feel like I was, like, hearing those words. My friend Teresa, when I saw her one time, I just gave her like this big hug. I just stopped and just gave her a big hug on the trail. And it just felt good, right? So the encouragement of others, that they were like, "Hey, you can keep doing this. You're looking good. You're looking strong." So I think, even though I didn't have pacers, like almost everybody felt like a support system out there, which is a lot of times what pacers are, right? They're the ones that keep you motivated. And luckily I had a whole like Texas running community out there that was just pumping me up all day. So that helped a lot in those low moments.
Oh yeah. Hey, and I don't know if you heard, there's this guy, his name's Andrew Marvin. He said he would give $1,000 to whoever broke the course record. Did he ever reach out to you?
So that's a really funny story, because I knew nothing about that going into this race. I mean, I didn't know who Andrew Marvin was. I didn't know. I mean, I was just there for a cool belt buckle, right? It had a
Yeah.
dinosaur skull on it. That's all I wanted. So I crossed the finish line and I stopped my watch, and just my wife's there cheering me on, my friends, everybody's so happy. And then this random guy just comes up to me. I mean, I might have been finished for like 2 or 3 minutes. He walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, I don't know you, but I'm going to pay you $1,000 because you beat the course record." And I thought it was a joke. And he actually presented it a little bit like better than what I just did. But I mean, I'm totally out of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm starting to shiver because my body temperature's dropping. I have no idea what's happening. And this guy comes up to me at the end of the race, was like, "Yeah, I owe you some money because you beat the course record." And again, I didn't know if it was serious or not. He's like, just go get warmed up, take care of yourself, come back and see me. I'm at this tent. And I went back and he was like, "Yeah, just give me your Venmo." And he Venmoed me $1,000 right there. So I had just thought I was getting a belt buckle. And sure enough, but he's turned out, I mean, he's reached out a little bit on social media, just seeing how I was doing, and really super nice guy. He didn't have to come up to me because I knew nothing about it, right? But he lived up to it. So I don't know if you know him or
Oh yeah.
anyone else knows him. He
He'll
lived
be
up to it.
listening.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's actually pretty new to the ultra running community, but like I think he just came into it a couple years ago. But yeah, I saw he posted that on Facebook, and so yeah, I was wondering if he actually ended up doing it. That's cool that he actually did though.
Yeah, he really did.
Oh
So
yeah.
that was let's say a pleasant surprise.
Oh yeah.
Again, I'm never going to run. I'm not doing it for any money. I mean, I'm not sponsored or anything like that. But I mean, I'm not going to turn it down, right? But actually, in all seriousness, though, it's such a like a kind gesture. I mean, he did it because he was trying to get more people to sign up for the race, right? Race awareness. If people knew this prize money was there, that they might get more people to sign up. I wouldn't mind. I'm thinking about, can I take that money or some of that money and like doing the same thing in my area to get people to sign up for more trail races. So can I pay it forward to kind of spread that, and it'd just be like this fun chain of events of just using these winnings to just support trail races that people might not know about otherwise. So
Yeah.
we'll see where we go with that. I got a couple ideas of some cool local races I might be able to do that at. So if that happens, thanks to Andrew for getting it started.
Yeah, shout out to Andrew. That race there, I don't know if you heard, but they were trying to make it a Western States qualifier race.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that, and I think at one point they had almost 230 people signed up. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, just people get injured, people drop out. I heard it was down to 210, and then when I showed up the night before the race, they said it was down to 185, and then the actual start line, only 130 actually showed up.
Yeah.
Um, so this year it didn't quite happen, but it's such a great race. I mean, I'm going to promote it all over. I mean, we'll probably go back again. I don't know what distance, but I'll bring friends. I mean, I think this race is so cool. It's going to catch on, and it's only a matter of time before it becomes, Western States qualifier. And the race director, Libby, she's phenomenal, right? Anybody who puts on that good a race, the communication, the organization, the helping everyone like feel welcome and supported as like part of the family. It's only a matter of time before that type of race just blows up into a Western States qualifier. And yeah, who knows?
Absolutely. She's trying to make it a qualifier, be one of the big qualifiers in North Texas because DFW has this crazy big trail and ultra running community blowing up. And we don't have any Western States qualifiers really, except for, we got Bandera down south, but she's trying to get one in North Texas. So I think it's a really great thing. And I'll be out there. I plan on being out there next year. So
Good. Well, I might
yeah.
I might see you there, whether it be like again crewing or pacing or running some of the distances. It's just one of those fun ones that you just can't help but want to go back, right? I mean, that's why a lot of us, who knows why we all get into running, but oftentimes the reason we stay in running is the community. And I think that race is all about community. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So other than Andrew Marvin giving you $1,000, did you get any other cool award for getting first place?
Yeah, like a little wooden dinosaur kind
Okay.
of trophy deal.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, again, just that belt buckle, that sub 24 belt buckle
Yeah.
was really cool. I mean, I love having a good buckle, but that, that's not why we do it, really. Ultimately, it's
Yeah,
not the hardware, it's not the accolades. It's we've all got our different reasons,
yeah,
and so I mean, I think walking away just with a full heart, really proud of what I did was probably more important than any kind of little trophy I could get.
absolutely. Um, what advice would you give to people looking to run that race next year, or people who are looking to get into ultra and trail running in general?
Yeah, for that race, do some ankle strength work, right? Those rocks are going to tear you up, especially if you're not from that area. But in general, I think it'd be a good first 100 for people. It'd be tough,
Yeah,
but because of the great aid stations, because it's a looped course, right? You can figure out the course and start getting a plan every time you go through the loop. These are the sections I'm going to run fast. These are sections I'm going to have to take it easy because it's technical. It's predictable, right? And so sometimes having a good it's as predictable as it can be for a 100-mile race, right? Nothing ever goes quite as planned, but I would say just get used to that terrain, do a little bit of hill work, but it's not the craziest hilly race in the world. That's maybe for Texas, it's a little hilly, but it's not a mountain race, right? So it's kind of in that fine middle area that, yeah, again, I'm going to go back to that strength work. Don't neglect it. It'll keep you injury free. And I noticed a lot of people when they were stopping at aid stations, they were nursing some kind of knee or muscle or ankle. And if you can just don't stop too long at aid, keep moving, prep for all aspects, not just the distance, but the strength training, the rocks, the terrain. It's a fun one. My other advice, again, thinking about how I trained for this, there's definitely professionals out there, really good runners that have like a set way that they train for every race, and they say this is the right way to do it. My advice would be like, kind of find your own blend of that, right? Lean on those people and get their advice, but it doesn't have to be like day to day, 100% exactly what someone else does. If you're starting to feel like you're hurting too much and like you're getting on the edge of an injury, don't feel like, oh, well, I needed an 80-mile week or a 100-mile week, so I gotta just keep running through this. Sometimes, just figure out your own balance within that plan. Because if you can just get to the start line healthy, you'd be amazed at what you can do on race day, right? An injured runner is going to be slower. I don't care how great of an athlete you are. If you're injured, you're always going to end up slower than someone else, right? So just show up healthy and do that in your own way. For me, health has been, a interesting journey of mine over the years. So aside from the muscles, when I was younger, I got diagnosed with like a heart condition, right? It's just a nervous thing, like a nerve thing. You've got your electrical and you've got your plumbing, right? That's how people describe the heart. This was an electrical thing, just things firing a little off, like beating funny. But since I started running in 2017, um, I've had 3 different heart procedures, right? This year I had one in January. And so I've been on these different medications. And so I've had to take significant time off following those procedures. And so when I talk about doing your own journey and your own training, I mean, everybody's got life things coming up. And so you find a way, like, don't overexert yourself if you're in a position that doesn't make sense or it isn't healthy to overexert yourself, right? So just show up, show up to race and race start in a healthy way. That's my advice.
well, yeah, yeah. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your experience, your advice. Is there anything else that you would like to let the Texas running community know?
Just a big thanks. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm gonna be back, right? I'm glad that my friend Chris talked me into coming down this race. I had been down to Bandera before, and I really had an awesome experience. And this just solidified that. I mean, there's great races in my backyard for sure in the Kansas City area, but it's just so fun to meet people, especially people that make you feel like family, despite the fact that you just met, out here on the trails. So just a big thanks to everyone. Thanks for making me feel welcome and part of the team. And I can't wait to come back and contribute, whether it be volunteering or crewing or whatever, to more of your races.
All right, y'all. That was Jeremiah. Now we're gonna get into our recording with Regina, and she has a really awesome story when it comes to prepping for this race and what pushed her through the race. But that's enough of that. Here's Regina. You ran 100 miles in 22 hours, 58 minutes. You got first place female, and you got sixth overall. How the heck did you do that?
Yeah, a little bit of skill. I think a lot of grace. I was actually sick the week before the race, so on Monday I wasn't even sure I was going to get to run. I felt that bad, but I run a lot, and I'm just maintain a lot of miles throughout the week. Do a lot of cross training, so I think when race day came, even though I hadn't run much that week, I think it was actually turned out to be really good because my legs were fresh and they were ready to go. And thankfully, on race day, like everything just kind of came together really well.
So, what kind of sickness did you have, and how did that affect you?
I think it was a cold or the flu. I
Yeah.
actually had a lot of nausea Monday, and like it was pretty bad. So something's going around, and it got me.
Yeah.
It was really hard mentally to like deal with that all week. And I mean, even during the race, if I stopped running, I would start coughing.
Wow.
I had that lingering cough. So it was extra motivation, I guess, to keep running. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You were able to pull off a win at a 100-mile race. Super good time, 22 hours, 58 minutes. That's super. That's really impressive. Um, and you had a cold right before, so that's really cool. I noticed in your pictures you have a My Little Pony thing. What's up with the My Little Pony thing?
um, I my mom gave that to me years ago, and it always sits on my desk. And last year, I was training for an FKT, and I was going up there. I went up there a couple of times and ended up going by myself. And it's like, man, I need a pacer. I need company. So the little pony was on my desk, so I grabbed it and just put it in my vest. It goes with me a lot of places now. It was not with me at the race a few weeks ago. Well, it was with me, but I didn't carry it. I didn't need it. I had my own. I had some really good pacers to help me out. So, but yeah, it's kind of just my little company, my trail companion.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that's really neat. And you mentioned your FKT. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I actually have a couple. In 2020, I wanted to do my first 100-mile race. I had not signed up for anything early in the year, and we kind of know how the rest of the year went. So I decided to try to make my own 100 miler. There's a trail called Lone Star Hiking Trail. I did that one in 2021, and I kind of caught the bug. So last year, I went and did the 130-mile Northeast Texas Trail and sat in the overall FKT on that one. It was a big adventure for sure.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't even know about that trail. I told my buddy from Little Rock about it, and he didn't even know it existed. A lot of people don't. And it's is it all paved or are they still working on it? Do you know?
They're still working on it.
Yeah.
There are some paved sections. There are a lot of just grass sections or gravel. Some sections aren't even open. You kind of have to go over to the road. Some of it's really overgrown. So it was quite the adventure. Like a little bit of everything out there. You wouldn't think a rails to trails would have that much diversity of terrain, but it was kind of fun. The bridges were definitely exciting because a lot of those cross ties are like a foot apart and they're kind of
Yeah.
janky because they're old, and definitely a little scary a few times.
Oh yeah, I've seen some pictures, some sketchy pictures of there of cracks in the concrete that are as big as people's feet that they could
Oh
step in, and
yeah,
it's dangerous when there's leaves and during the fall. And so
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that's
the,
really
the
neat.
the guy who's FKT, who I stole the FKT from, actually did Dino Valley. He came in 30 minutes ahead of me, I think.
Wow.
I'd never met him before, so it's kind of cool to see him out there running the same race together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very impressive. So would you say that the reason you are as fast as you are would you say it's hard work? Would you say it's that mixed in with just good genetics, or is it just straight up hard work? Genetics don't really play a role. What do you could you go in depth a little bit more about that?
Um, there's some hard work. I
Yeah.
don't know how much genetics there is. I don't know how much athleticism my parents had necessarily. They were never really big that I know of athletes growing up. But I think a lot of it's just doing something I enjoy.
Yeah.
Like I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, just that alone can help you. I mean, it's just changes so much. Like people can put all the hard work in, but if they're hating what they're doing, then they're not going to get anything out of it. But when you really enjoy it, like I do, like you that's all you ever want to do. So, and then the speed follows.
Yeah. So what got you to the point where you started to really enjoy running? Like where did that start?
Um, Not right away. I got into this as an adult, maybe about, I guess, 10 years ago. I was going to do, you see other people, like I see other people at work and they're like, oh, I've done the Chevron marathon, the local Houston marathon as Chevron. And I'm like, oh, I've done that. And you look at them, I was like, well, if they can do it, like I can do it. So I'm like, so I put in the work, did the traditional training, didn't know anybody, just kind of doing it on my own, trained for this marathon. And I was like, I'm going to do this once and I'm never going to, never going to do this again. And I don't know, I guess the bug kind of hit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It, I did a 5:20 marathon. I'm like, man, I can do better. I can do way better. So, and it just kind of took off from there. Everything just kind of kept growing. Obviously, we're up to 100 miles now. So,
Boom. Yeah. Yeah. I'm honestly, again, like I'm really impressed and I'm excited to see what more you do in the future. And I just love seeing your talent and your hard work pay off, and there'd be some awesome results behind it. And I saw in the picture, Greg was there. And is Greg coaching you?
no, he's not.
Okay.
I'm surprised that he was even available to pace me.
Okay.
Which was great. He put a spreadsheet together based on like what I'd kind of told him about like my goals, time goals. And then, he's, kept me on pace. He paced me for miles 50 to 70 and mile 50, I'm starting to slow down. I want to slow down. I just want to take this easy and I don't care anymore. Like my mentally, I'm not as in the game as I was at mile 5.
Yeah.
So he definitely kept me like motivated me to like, okay, let's do this. Yes, I'm still capable of going as fast as I was. Like kept me on pace, kept me moving. I wasn't happy about it the entire time. I kind of like kept that inside me. I didn't want to be, cursing at him out, verbally, but inside I was a little bit. But definitely thankful for his I definitely would have slowed down a lot without him being there.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. Shout out to Greg if you're happen to be listening to this. But yeah, and you mentioned that he motivated you and kept on pushing you. What were some of the things that pushed you through that race and through those hard times during the race?
Honestly, like seeing that race has such a huge section where it's just out and back and you see so many other people out there, just not just having him in front of me, but also like him interacting with the other runners, me interacting with the other runners. Like you get to know people, you see the same faces every loop, twice a loop sometimes. So you kind of build that connection. It's like, man, it's like, oh, so and so's coming up. I can see them down the trail. I gotta get my my smile face back on. I gotta keep it together. Can't be showing them apart. So I think for me, I always say like, if you have a smile on your face, it's harder to like let those internally. If you're smiling outwardly, it's harder for those negative thoughts to build internally. So it like helps you keep a positive mindset. It helps me keep a very positive mindset out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to say I read a book called How Bad Do You Want It? And in the book, they did a scientific study and they found that when you smile, when you run, you actually do better and you perform better whenever you're smiling.
I believe that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I'd like to hear about your training for this race. What did that look like? Give us digits. Give us how many miles a week, what kind of strength
Oh
training you did,
gosh.
stuff like that.
Um, I didn't really have a regimented training program for this.
Oh
My
wow.
fall really got cluttered up with a lot of races. Not that I'm not complaining about that because I enjoyed every bit of it, but I did not have the specific run miles necessarily. I think I do 40 to 60 miles a week on average. A lot of for a 100 miler, I really try to focus on maybe not so much the miles, it's all the other stuff you do. Like you said, it's the strength training. I get to the gym a few times a week. I do Camp Gladiator, which is like a boot camp style, which is like for a traditional runner might not be like, it's like, oh, what are you doing? It's not really like you snub your nose at it. I snub my nose at it forever, but it's really good. It's a really good leg workout. So I keep doing it. It's worked with me. I think it's helped my speed, interval training. I also do stuff like volunteering overnight shifts at races or trying to pace other people or do something that involves maybe not running overnight but exposing like putting your body through what it's like to like not get any sleep, type of stuff, because the more stuff like that you can do to like get your just mentally and physically, like it's not just running miles, it's also running miles in the middle of the night, it's eating a hamburger and then running miles. It's there's so many things that go into it that you really have to, you can put miles in. I can go run 20 miles every weekend, but if I'm not eating the same way I will during a race, then how do I really know if that's gonna pay off for me? So.
Yeah, and what are some of those things that you trained with when it came to nutrition, things you were putting in your body? What were some of those?
um a lot of I'll eat just about anything. So and I do so many races. Usually, it's easy just to like if it's not as an important race, I can try new stuff there. A lot of the time, it's just like trying something I wouldn't normally try on the aid station table. If they got bacon, it's like okay, I'll try that out and see how it works. Or the avocado sandwiches or um, for me, what really works usually is just like mashed potatoes work great. I actually put some in some little, made my own and put them in some little squeeze pouches for Dino. Peanut butter jelly works great for me. I use Tailwind for liquid hydration. Honestly, if the race doesn't have Tailwind, I will bring my own. I like it that much. Which for me, usually I'll just eat whatever. But yeah, so like when I'm training, maybe eat some applesauce before I go out or some Oreos or, have a PBJ, whatever I think they might have on the aid station table that I might be eating on race day and
Yeah,
just keep it simple,
yeah, yeah. I think that's the best way to do it. Um, and I want to know what I asked Benjamin this as well. Why did you sign up for Dino Valley? What caught your eye with it?
The price.
Oh yeah, I forgot she did that huge sell. How much was it for the 100 miler?
Think it was $75.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
A friend here in Houston knew about it. He's in Cypress Wolfpack, so they'd done the race last year. A few of them had, so they knew about it. And he told me, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like for $75, I can muddle my way through. Like, see how this goes. At the time, I when I signed up, it was almost my first real 100-mile race too. Turns out it turned into me being my second, but so
Wow.
I'm pretty proud of second 100-mile race.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a really good price. I mean, you look at some of these races now, like these 200-mile races, they're in the $2,000 range. And
Yeah,
it,
they're up there.
oh yeah, they get,
Even I got into Leadville for next year and it's 375, which honestly I'd rather pay 375 for a 100-miler than 375 for like New York Marathon or something, but it's still not cheap.
oh yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of support out there though. And what race or how were you able to qualify for Leadville?
I did Silver Rush, which is a 50-mile race. On the weekend when they do Silver Rush, they have the run on Saturday and the bike ride on Sunday. So my strategy was I'm going to volunteer Friday packet pickup, do the run Saturday, and then volunteer Sunday packet, for the bike ride. So even if I don't get drawn for the run, I've got volunteer credits and I can get preference into the lottery this year. Thankfully I got drawn, so I didn't need the volunteer credits, but I was just doing it like that weekend. You can go up that weekend and get the volunteer credits and do the race all in the same weekend. So it's like I was just trying to be very efficient with my attempt to get in.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on getting in. I know a lot of people really want to get into that race. So yeah.
I'm super excited. A lot scared, but a lot excited.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be exciting. And some of these people that are listening, they're planning on running the Dino Valley next year, or they're probably just thinking about their next race. Could you tell us a little bit about the highs and lows that you went through during the race and what you did to get through those?
Yeah, there were a lot of highs and lows.
Oh yeah.
The first, so when you start the race, it's a lot of laps. It's 1 5-mile lap and 9 10.5-mile laps. You do the 5-mile lap first. You start at 7 o'clock. I think, it was a 7 o'clock start. There are a lot of shorter distances that start at 8 o'clock. So my first priority was getting that 5-mile loop done before 8 o'clock and getting out of there before 8 o'clock, before those racers started. So I took it a little fast. Worked out. I got in and out before that crowd, started down the trail. So I was super proud of that. And I just tried to keep running on that high as long as I could. Just about 25 miles, I guess, next 2 loops. It was just jamming. There's a lot of very flat, runnable sections on that trail that, you just open it up if you want to. I mean, it's a 100-mile race. You don't want to open it up too much, but if it's runnable, run it. The lollipop, there's a 5-mile lollipop. A lot of that's runnable, but there are also some down very technical sections in there. It could just be me, but it seemed like there was more downhill in that technical stuff than there was uphill. So when you're fresh, it's still easy to get through it pretty fast. I think that was part of my problem a little later in the race, struggling. My quads were destroyed I remember coming in around mile 45, telling my crew, I was like, my quads are destroyed. My legs are like toasted because I didn't slow down for those technical stuff sections, because they were downhill. As long as it's like easy, just let gravity do its work and just go with the flow. So around mile 45, I kind of started struggling. Definitely had to start taking things a lot slower. I never really had any extreme lows like I've had sometimes in the past. This was a very cold race. It was freezing in the morning. I think I heard it got into the upper 20s Saturday night, Sunday morning. I don't like cold. Like, I just, like, if you stop and you get cold and you just like, I shut down, and I think a lot of people do too. So my big strategy overnight was just to keep moving. I had to take a few breaks, change into dry clothes, stuff like that. But I never really just stopped and took a nap or anything. I think that helps a lot. Having pacers at the end definitely helped a lot. I didn't know either of my pacers very well. Like you said, I had Craig, and then I had German Garcia, or he goes by Bam.
Yeah, it's a great
second.
guy.
And these are both guys, I don't know them very well. So when you're someone who you don't know very well, it's like there's extra pressure to like not fall apart in front of them. So I think that helped a lot. They were both, they're both very good and great guys. I respect them a lot. So there was also that pressure to like try to like not let them down, even though it's my race. I didn't want to let my pacer down. So they kind of kept me riding on high a lot out there. There were a few moments that the repetition was definitely getting me at the end. The last few laps were really hard, mentally, just like, oh, we're here again. And then like every time you do it, it's like you know what the next landmark is that you have in your head, but like every time that landmark, it seems to take longer to get there. And it really, you're going slower, so it does, but like it takes longer and longer to get to that next landmark, and it's just so frustrating. It's like, oh, we're never gonna get there. But I just kept powering through, and like I said earlier, there were so many other people out there on the trail. It's encouraging. You see other friends and stuff, give shout outs. And I did kind of fall apart a little bit at the fence line aid station, the last aid station before I finished. I had some happy tears. It's like, oh, I'm 2.5 miles away, like I'm gonna finish this thing. I got a little happy, like teary. Like one of the volunteers gave me a hug. He's like, you need a hug. I was like, yeah, I need a hug. But honestly, like it was such a good experience. I think we do this a lot to find those really low lows, and I've found those lows in other races. This one I never really had a terrible one. Just keep pushing through.
Yeah, some good stuff right there. How did it feel to finish and know that you were done and that you also won? What was that like?
It was unreal. Honestly, I've still not quite got my head wrapped around. I was like, oh yeah, I won that. Hey, for a female, like for me, like it's nice being a woman. Sometimes I always tell people, like, I like to try to find someone faster to chase. And as a woman, like there's almost always someone faster. There are always the guys, and the guys are, there's always faster people to chase. So like you just focus on, like, I'm so focused on just, not that I necessarily had someone right in front of me the whole time, but it's like just trying to keep up, so to speak, trying to like just push that, like, push the limit a little bit, and just see what I can do. And yeah, I don't know, it was so, I remember also at the last aid station, I remember coming in and, one of the other volunteers is like, oh yeah, don't worry. Cause I was, I was kind of in a mental state there. And he's like, don't worry, the sun's going to be coming up in a few hours and you're going to feel better. And I, it clicked. I was like, I'll be done. I'll be done when the sun comes up. And it was just another little like ray of sunshine in my head mentally. It was like, oh, I'm gonna be done before the sun comes up. I'm gonna be done in less than 24 hours. Like, gave me some extra pep in those last few miles. Like, let's go do this. And then yeah, finishing is, I mean, when you finish a race, like it was a good sized race. There were a lot of people out there, but it's still, you finish 100-miler, you come across that finish line at like 5:00 in the morning. It's not like there's people standing around and spectators cheering. There's like nobody. Maybe you have a race director, there may be a photographer, your crew, your pacer, that's about it. But it makes it so much more intimate. It really is like, it's like, oh, I did this. So to me, it was just a great moment. Like I think it really, I come across the finish line sometimes in things and they're so big. It's like, it doesn't really set in because you got all this noise around you, all these things happening. And like, this was so quiet when I finished, and just so, this is just the people there that I knew, and really made me appreciate it more. Like, it's just like, you had that moment to yourself. It was like that, this is all mine,
Yeah, it wasn't quite like Western States finish, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I've never done Western States, but yeah, probably not. You're not going across this one that finishes on a track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It definitely wasn't like New York a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So what is some last piece of wisdom you'd like to give people out there that are runners?
For me, I mean, I have a few rules that I kind of go by.
Sure.
Rule number one is, you always do it because it makes you happy. It's not always going to be fun, but sometimes we need those hard things to make us really appreciate, why we do it and what really makes us happy out there. And then like my other rule is like running is not, it's not a speed or a distance necessarily. I mean, we're all in different levels and different places in our run journey, but running is just it's emotion, it's an energy. And if you embrace that running energy, then you are a runner. It doesn't matter if you're doing a 16-minute mile at the tail end of a 5K or, you know, a 5-minute mile at the beginning of a 100-miler. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're out there enjoying what you really enjoy doing.
Wow.
And then just keep smiling through it.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Those are the winners of the Dinosaur Valley 100-mile race in Texas. And if you guys enjoyed the episode, leave a rating. Let the world know. If you guys leave a rating, it helps recommend our podcast to other runners, and it helps connect the Texas running community and for people to be able to hear the highlights and stories of Texas runners, Texas races, and things like that. So leave a rating, y'all. And every Monday we have a Shooting the Bull episode, and we talk about life, running, and fitness. And it's me and Asher shooting the bull. And then once a month we have a premiere episode, which is what you're listening to right now, that we publish, and we bring on a guest and we talk about their experience of a race they ran. And so if you guys want to stay tuned to that, make sure you subscribe or follow the podcast. But that is enough of that. You guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.